take your seats. Thank you, because I guess you want to get to that gala dinner early. We won't keep you too long. Okay. Thank you very much, and it's great to, I think, finish the day in style. We're going to finish the day in style with an overview on women's entrepreneurship, the state of the art of women's entrepreneurship. And Jem is very well positioned to produce such a thing as state of the art of women's entrepreneurship, because we have a great deal of data over many, many years that informs on how women are doing in communities across the world in terms of getting their startups up the ground, establishing businesses, and moving even to high growth. And I'd like to introduce Amanda Elam, who has, for the past 5 years, been the main author for our women's report. And she's not the only author. She will talk to you about the authors, no doubt. As usual, the Women's Report is a hugely collaborative effort. We have to thank the national teams for the data, always thank the national teams for this precious data. But we also have co-authors involved in the report. But without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Amanda, who works at Babson College, actually, and she will bring you through some of the main findings of the report. And then afterwards, we'll have a discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. So welcome, everyone. I'm just going to take a few minutes to set the stage for our panel discussion by walking you through some of the highlights from the 2023-24 GEM Women's Report. Our focus was, we called it Reshaping Economies and Communities. So this was a very exciting year. As you know, we've had over 25 years of GEM data now, and we took that opportunity in this year's 12th annual report to reflect on the history of the GEM Women's Report, to do some time series analysis, and as well as presenting some of the latest findings. So this is the 12th report. Our first report was actually completed using 2003 data and put out in 2004, and it was a collaboration between the Babson GEM founding team and the Center for Women's Entrepreneurial Leadership at Babson College, where I do sponsored research projects and other projects like GEM. We also took a look at the impact, right? So we know that the GEM Women's Report is well cited by policymakers, researchers, and other stakeholders in the GEM community. It's used to substantiate and reflect the importance of women's entrepreneurship in economies around the world, how women are starting and growing businesses that are foundational to these economies, make life better, address key social needs, as well as driving innovation and doing great things. And some of the stats I pulled together for this, looking a general keyword search, we found with gender and Global Entrepreneurship Monitor in the abstract or the title of referee journal articles, 4,000 articles came up. So, and that means they're either using the data or they're referencing GEM, and it's important to the study. Also, for last year's report by November, so in 1 year, 12 months, we had over 20,000 downloads. So people who are actively wanting to access the full report and read it. So that's a reflection of how important this report is for users out there. So our time series analysis, we found big signs of change. We looked at 5 indicators. So we were looking at startup activity. We were looking at established business ownership. We looked at 3 perceptions, so opportunity recognition, confidence in startup skills, and fear of failure. And we found significant change in 30 countries who had participated in the first 5 years of the GEM program and also in the most recent 3 years. So 76% increase in startup activity for women. That is astronomical, and it really shows that a lot of the programs and the policymaking and the media attention and the female role models we're putting out there for women are really encouraging women to take on the challenges of starting and growing businesses. We also found that established business ownership rates, so these are businesses older than 3.5 years, suggesting sustainable business activity, increased by 45%. And then we see some of the key perceptions, like recognizing opportunities and confidence and skills, are also going up. Especially for opportunity recognition, and maybe not surprisingly as part of a larger global trend, but also that fear of failure is up. As we get out there and we start and grow businesses, we're realizing the challenges, and we become very sober about the risks that we're taking. And of course, many of you probably may share the view too that women may feel like they have a little bit more to lose because everyone's expecting them to fail. So fear of failure, gender gap is of interest to researchers. The biggest gains we saw in Saudi Arabia with a 6x increase in female startup rates, Croatia by 5, Netherlands by 4, Japan by 3.5 times what they had 20 years ago. And then we saw some possible setbacks. These are complex, it's complex to understand the changes in startup activity, but Jordan, Poland, and Norway saw some reduction, and that's something where I'd really want to spend some time with those teams to understand why. In terms of highlights, you know, startup activity, women are, you know, starting businesses about 10 to 11% on average. This is about 80% of men. You've heard that stat come up before today. However, we don't spend a lot of time talking about the economies or countries where women are starting businesses at parity or even at higher rates than men, including countries like China, Colombia, Ecuador, Lithuania, and Thailand. That's just in 2023. We see some of the largest gender gaps, however. So those are gaps where women represent business startups at 60%. The rate of men or less. In Cyprus, Hungary, Jordan, Morocco, Norway, Slovenia are examples of economies where there are very large gender gaps. So women represent a really important part of the type of economic activity going on that policymakers really care about. That's high potential activity. So they are creating companies that are creating a lot of jobs, like startups that expect more than 20 jobs in a year. Women represent 1 out of 3 companies that are high job creation companies. They're involved in export business even more than that, so representing 2 out of 5. And then they're focusing on international and national markets, really big markets. This is what investors care about, right? You need a big market, go after a big market to have a good return. And then innovation. Women are, you know, somewhere between 40 and 50% are introducing new innovations to their markets. And I think that this is a story that's not heard very well, that when policymakers are investing in entrepreneurs who are driving innovation, economic growth, doing really ambitious aspirational work, women are a sizable part of that population of entrepreneurs. We heard about age earlier today, and again, high-growth startups, those younger women represent a large share of the women who are doing really tremendous things and have really big aspirations in starting and growing businesses, which suggests that we need to be paying attention to those young women out there. Digitalization. Digitalization, as you know, is considered a way of leveling the playing field for a lot of small businesses relative to large businesses, and this is very true. Any policy that supports small businesses really helps women because women are overrepresented among the smallest businesses. And in COVID in particular, we saw women take up tools at a high rate, and we're still seeing this. I think that, importantly, one thing we want to understand better is why women are more likely than men in many economies to say that digitalization isn't necessary for their business. And as you heard today, GEM's added additional measures to really start understanding digitalization in businesses. I think one of the things when we're looking at digitalization of businesses, we really need to pay attention to participation in ICT sectors. There are countries like the United States where women are participating in information, communications, technology companies at similar rates to men. The gap's closing. And then we have other countries like Germany, for example, where women are woefully underrepresented in ICT compared to men when it comes to starting new businesses. Then we also are looking at investors, financial access to capital. Most businesses close because they can't establish a profitable business model. But the second most common reason for closing a business is because you can't find the financial capital to grow the business. And so for women, that can be a challenge. And it's a complex problem, but this is an area where we're going to focus more attention going forward as well. And then quickly, I'm just going to wrap with recommendations. This year's report, again, like the global report and the sustainability report, if we're looking across all economies, we have to be careful with our recommendations. They tend to be very general. But we know some things work. We know that highlighting successful women entrepreneurs has a big impact on those the next generation of entrepreneurs coming back, celebrating their successes, putting those models out as aspirational, and supporting research and data collection. Anyone in international development knows we talk a lot about the need for gender data, gender-segregated data analysis. We need to really understand what these patterns are. So we need to support researchers doing gender and entrepreneurship research, and we really need to support research programs like GEM, who actually are collecting and highlighting and putting and investing in this kind of data collection and analysis. And then, of course, we need to support education and training. A lot of education and training programs out there for general women will often have lower participation rates. Targeted programming makes a big difference. Creating a home for women to grow, to start incubators, accelerators focused on women can make a big difference. And then, of course, expanding access to capital. And that isn't necessarily creating women-focused funds. It could be having events where you're connecting women to investors or to industry partners, potential strategic partners, because one of the biggest barriers to access to capital for women is simply the networks. And anyone who has any experience in investment world, you know that those top investors have a pretty exclusive club. And so accessing that club can be very challenging, especially since women represent a minority among the top investors. So I'm going to close the highlights there, Elaine, and we can go on to discussion.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Amanda. If you could take a seat, and if we could have the full panel up here, please. Thank you very much. So welcome. Welcome today. A little bit like the women's panel, the sustainability and entrepreneurship panel that we had earlier. We have some representation from our national teams, which allows us to get another perspective from a national point of view. But we also have Wingee, who has been a fantastic supporter of our women's work. The research, the report, really has been an incredible partnership, Wingee. And I'd like to thank you for that, because I think I told you earlier, we've been wanting to make sure that we do a women's report every year, and Cartier Women's Initiative has really enabled us to do so. Not only Cartier Women's Initiative, but also other supporters, the Women Entrepreneurs Finance Initiative, which is a World Bank initiative, and also the School of Management Freiburg, which I mentioned earlier, and others have helped us as well. So that's been very, very important. We also have today Cristina Oyon, who's the SPRI representative from the Basque government. And again, like with the sustainability report that we discussed earlier, I would like to for you, Cristina, to take a role of grounding us in actual policy ramifications of the kinds of work that we do. But first, what I'll do, now that you've heard Amanda, is I will ask for a round of reactions, all right? And you can choose, what aspect of this you would like to emphasize as you like, and maybe starting with you, Wingee, would that be okay?
Yeah. Sure, yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Aileen, and thank you, everyone. Such a privilege to be here on behalf of Cartier Women Initiatives to support this work. Thank you for all the GEM researcher for your tireless effort in collecting all the data that informs incredible analysis by Dr. Elam that we follow very closely in terms of the recommendation each year. And so I would really truly say the Cartier Women Initiative program, which consists of providing financial, social, and human capital support to women impact entrepreneurs, are really following very closely the guidance that Dr. Elam has shared with us, rather than supporting the GEM research, building investor connection, building human capital support programs for the entrepreneurs. And so I hope you all know that all the research and dedication effort that you have spent on the data gathering really translates to really us walking the talk that we are here today.
Thank you so much. So Mahsa, Samsami, you are part of the South African team as well, with Netanya, and you have also experience of other teams, right? So please, can you give us a reaction, maybe a grounding in terms of, the more national experiences that you've had? Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much for having me. Okay. In principle, I would like to focus my talks today based on the ecosystem for the women entrepreneurs. Right. Because the interesting point about the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor is we can take an advantage of the national expert opinion, that in different contexts around the world, in addition to the adult population survey, because women entrepreneurship based on the ecosystem that is developed or even big in different society can be conceptualized as including the regulations favoring women, and even based on the social norms and the culture that encourage women entrepreneurs. As an example, this morning we had reflecting to our young entrepreneurs, as a women entrepreneurs, she pointed out it might be some difficulty in Spain for run a business and then develop their business because of the tradition. So we need the ecosystem to support women. We reported at the report that an opportunity perception has had upward over the time, included the self-efficacy, even if risk-willingness had a downward over the time. But Jeff pointed out entrepreneurial mindset, and I would like to even conclude entrepreneurial orientation among the women, because we found that when the ecosystem is developed for the women, you can see that the entrepreneurial orientation gets a boost. Right. And even if you are thinking about the prestige of the entrepreneurial role among the women, again, ecosystem favoring the women help to get an enhancement for the prestige of the entrepreneurial role. So we need the attention from the mediation because of the increasing media focusing on the successful women entrepreneurs will play an important role to reduce stereotype and also foster confidence for the women. It happened definitely for the entrepreneurial intention that is amplified by the ecosystem, but let's think about the performance related to outcomes for the women entrepreneurs, specifically about internationalization, because we found that ecosystem for the women entrepreneurs, which is actually help them to have a strong activities in their own business, help them to expand their market scope from the national and the local to the international scope. Mm-hmm. It happened differently, of course, for the digitalization. We are thinking about artificial intelligence, and I would like to point it out, we have a slightly difference between the men and women entrepreneurs, but again, ecosystem gets a boost intent to adopt digital technology in the future. Just the last point, I would like to add the sustainability, because even at the report, we found that make a difference around the world for the women is actually highlighted, more highlighted than men, because they have a role of the caretaker, not only to take care of their family, but also business. It happened also for environment, for sustainability. An ecosystem favoring the women gets a boost again for the sustainability behavior for the women entrepreneurs to maximize social implication. So policymakers, we need policymakers and the ecosystem for the women to encourage them to perform better. And also as a researcher, I would like to highlight that we have a responsibility to shed light on what women entrepreneurs need to, as you said yesterday, Aileen, we have a message from our data, not only adult population survey, but also national expert survey. So we need to articulate practical implication for the policymakers based on the producing report, a special report at the global level or even national level, something that we have in South Africa and also in Spain. Additionally, for our publication, we don't need just focus on the practice, that for theory. We need to that implication for the theory. We need the implication for the practices to give policy public more message about the women entrepreneurs.
Yes, correct. And I think Amanda said, at the global level, giving these recommendations can seem quite general, but I think that there is an opportunity at the national level to become more granular in that respect, really. And we probably can leverage GEM's research much better in that way,
Exactly.
I will come to you last, Cristina, for the grounding. And can I ask you, Iñaki, I think everybody knows Iñaki here, but from the Iñaki Peña from the University of Deusto. So what is your experience really in terms of the barriers and overcoming the barriers that women have in becoming entrepreneurs, in remaining entrepreneurs, in becoming established entrepreneurs, and in moving to high growth businesses here in the region?
Okay. Well, first I would like to congratulate and thank for this initiative. I think that having an annual report, it's challenging, but it's necessary. And I think that this is a good tool to think about, and most importantly, to take action. And I totally agree with what you said earlier. Well, I am the only man here.
You what?
I am the only man in this table. And probably I think that we should have more men here. Because
we should have half-half. Well, I did try.
But see, this is telling something to us. But you asked me for the experience on high growth firms. Let me explain my experience in terms of trying to help people, men and women, trying to scale up their businesses. I was the co-founder of a business angel network here in our local region. We got 36 men and 1 woman. So when we talk about gender gap, it's not a gender gap in terms of how many women are starting businesses. We need to look at the quality of the businesses, and you already highlighted some issues there, but this is a problem that doesn't happen only here. If we took the venture capitalist market and we took the whole funding in the US, in 2023, out of all the funds, 98% went to male-led businesses, which means that only 2% went to female-led businesses. If we see the map of IPOs everywhere, what is the percentage of women that reached that far? 10, 15% at most. If we talk about unicorns, they all have the same colors. White, whatever, but it should be more colors there. So what I want to say is that, and you mentioned, we have a very male-dominated circles. And I don't think that the problem is a woman's problem, it's our problem. Because we do not open our mind, we do not open the doors, so that angel investment networks, I don't think that they should be only a male thing or only a female thing. I think that it should be the most qualified ones. And this is not an issue about gender. It should not be.
I'm not sure, is that you or me? I'm not sure. But you may have, you're too Spanish, you know, the Spanish, they move. Yes, but very good point. But I'll actually come to you, Amanda. You know, women are falling out of the high-tech sectors, for example. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that? How women tend to go into certain sectors and...
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, of course, there's a lot of sociology on this topic, right? The idea of occupational and industry segregation. So our underlying gender logic, you know, the idea that women do the caregiving and men do the breadwinning, can translate into workplace patterns. So men are more likely to fill the higher echelons, vertical segregation, and then horizontally across industries, women are more likely to start businesses in caring industries. So education, health services, social services. This is very pertinent to sustainability question because women are slightly more, but you know they're also more likely to start businesses that fundamentally, that is the whole mission of the company as well. So not just adopting those challenges. So these patterns have really big implications for structural bias against women, because investors don't invest in a lot of these sectors where women are starting and growing businesses at high rates. These are these are industries that are characterized by smaller businesses that are locally focused. And by the way, the men starting businesses in these same industries also tend to stay small and focus locally. And so, Aileen, we've talked about this in the past too, which is these industry sectors are desiring ideas for how to get more people investing in those sectors because they're solving fundamental problems around education and health and, you know, the social welfare of these economies, poverty alleviation, or, you know, focusing on people with differences or disabilities. And I think that this is really well reflected if any of you take some time to look at the fellows in the Cartier Women's Initiative program. By definition, they're impact entrepreneurs because a lot of them are applying technology, for example, to create solutions that are easily scalable in these same sectors where investors tend not to invest. And so there's a little bit of a challenge there.
Yeah, I mean, there's very definitely an association with the investment side of things because right now in the world we're in with artificial intelligence and digital, you know, upcoming, that's where the main investment is as well, and women are missing out if they're not in those areas. But I'll turn now to you, Cristina, and what's your experience in terms of, you know, some of what you have heard, and how does that reflect on, you know, the policymakers' role in trying to change the picture a little bit? Yeah.
Okay, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to be here today, and thank you very much for organizing this event here in the Basque Country. Welcome, all of you. We are very happy to have you around. Thank you very much, Iñaki, for being amongst us. Now you know how we feel most of our working days. Yeah. So today you are the only male in my life, working life. I'm normally the only female on the stage. So thank you very much for what you said. I think it's really, really very important to have this is not a question of women. This is a question of everybody. So I'm, as you said, I'm working for the government of the Basque Country, for the Ministry of Industry, Energy Transition and Sustainability. In fact, I'm working in the Industrial Development Agency. So from this agency, Grupo SPRI, I'm the Deputy Director General, and we promote, as we have, the entrepreneurship in our region. We are part of, I'm sure that some of my colleagues have been around here today, or maybe they are, because we cannot see anything from here. And yeah, we are very happy because entrepreneurship is one of the areas for business promotion that we foster. On the other hand, we also, well, the Basque Country is a very industrial region. Almost 21% of our GDP come from manufacturing activity, 25% from industrial activity, and almost 40% if we count also services related to industry. So in this area is, as you said, where are less women working in the industrial sector. So we have seen many reports, and we have been part of many different networks of manufacturing and industrial activity, and this, in general, only 20% of the people working in the industry are women. Mm-hmm. So we have been focusing our work during these last 4 or 5 years in promoting the involvement of women, not only in entrepreneurship, but in the industrial activity, because we really believe that this is a question of competitiveness, not only a question of human rights, that of course, but we are analyzing the question of the participation of women at all levels, horizontal, vertical involvement, because we really believe this is a question of competitiveness. We have established also, well, we have, as I said, we have been working during the last 4 years and we have made analysis and reports, and congratulations for the report. One of the conclusions that we have is the first thing that we need, this is a strategic imperative for all of our activity, is that we need transformation of our culture in general, at home, at the school, at the university, at the workplaces, all over. But this is very easy to say, but very difficult to start working in this transformation. So we have analyzed also that for this transformation, we established 3 main building blocks, and one building block was, is to have data and research, as you pointed out in your conclusions. Everybody says that if you don't measure, you don't know, but that's true in the case of the participation of women in the economy in general. So we have conducted a report and analysis also, and we have developed a methodology to analyze the relationship between competitiveness in the industrial sector and women involvement. And we have a survey with almost 500 responses from companies in the Basque Country, in principle, companies that are working with us in the Business Development Agency, that in principle they are working with us because they want to innovate, to internationalize their activity, they want to invest, so they are medium, high level or technology-intensive companies. Although only 20% of their of the people working there are women, we have analyzed the correlation between competitiveness indicators and gender equality and gender policies within the company's indicators, and we have demonstrated that is a slight but positive relationship between the involvement of women and the competitiveness of the companies.
Oh, that's really encouraging, yeah.
Yes, we want to use this as a tool for encourage companies to, because they always said that they are not finding women to incorporate them, as you said and you mentioned, in ICT, digital technologies, there are less women working there. Yeah, well, you as a company owner, you have to make the effort to look for these women or to foster the incorporation of girls in the STEM and the incorporation of girls and women in your selection process.
Okay, I've got a kind of linked question, which came up when we were talking about the sustainability report. And in general, I mean, even our global report, year after year after year, we have this issue of education, that it isn't, the sort of seed of entrepreneurship is not really planted in young children, young children really, even in primary or in secondary schools. And so all the more so for women, they just, in general, are not thinking of entrepreneurship as an option. Now, I live in Switzerland, and the Swiss, our GEM Switzerland report, has been saying this year after year. There's a very close relationship between GEM Switzerland and the Swiss Confederation, and yet nothing's moving. Would you be able to give a perspective on, I mean, this is not the only country, by the way, it's across the board. Would you be able to give a perspective on why it is that we don't manage to move the goalposts on education? I mean, education in Switzerland at the university level is integrating this. The postgraduate level is integrating this, but not in schools,
Yeah, well, it's a very good.
Why is it not moving?
It's a very good question that I don't have the response, because this is something that all of us are struggling with, this idea. Why the education starts to make big differences between girls and boys, and why we are still having this this idea that you also said, that girls are more related to catering services, boys are more related to more courageous activities. And at the end of the day, entrepreneurship is really courageous activity. So you need to be brave, and you need to jump in the uncertainty. And looks like girls are not being educated that much in that sense.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I would say, please jump in, anyone who would like to, that entrepreneurship in general at those young ages, not for boys or girls, is not being encouraged, so, would you,
I think, again, I need to move.
They turn you off?
Okay, nothing happened. I didn't hear anything. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes? What? No. Oh, not much?
I'm not going to be able.
Do we have
tech support
there? No. Tech support? I don't know. Yeah. Okay. We'll come back to you.
I'm sorry, but I feel discriminated.
Well, welcome to our world. I'm sorry. Wingee, your experiences, you have so many experiences with women entrepreneurs. And what would you say is the factor that is frustrating them the most? I mean, I'm presuming financing, but probably you can give some more insights. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. For the Cartier Women Initiative, we've been running for around 17 years, and we have around 330 fellows globally in our program, and it's a highly selective program. And so for someone to be selected to be awarded as a Cartier Women Initiative Fellow, they usually are the top 30 of thousands globally. And even then, when we look at this group of 30 women, they have courage, and yet it is still a very difficult moment in terms of their entrepreneurship journey. And I would say their two big key challenges is for sure access to financing, and not just access to any type of financing, but lead investor. So now I think many women entrepreneurs who are able to build traction can gather a group of investors, but nobody would be the lead of that round. And so we're actually very focused on now, in terms of our capital programs, when we connect investors to the entrepreneurs, to specifically focus on looking for people who are willing to be the lead of a woman investment round. investment round on a woman impact entrepreneur. And then the second piece of it is definitely around well-being, and the well-being piece of it, I think well-being is challenging for all entrepreneurs, actually, women and men, but women in our different chapters in our lives and different moments of event, whether it's motherhood or just the extra care responsibility, a lot of times that falls on our shoulder because of elderly generations. It actually creates additional challenges for us in terms of well-being during the entrepreneurship journey. And so as part of the Cartier Women Initiative, we have also offered a parenthood program for entrepreneurs who are participating in our program, because otherwise they wouldn't be able to take advantage of all the resources that we're offering them. And so I would say those are the two things that we have noticed are still remaining to be some of the key challenges and what we have been trying to do to tackle them.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, I'll come back to you.
Thank you.
We have to get the gold nugget.
I just wanted to point out just a short thing. When we talk about education, I think that education, especially when we talk about values, because ultimately we are talking about values, this should start from home.
Right.
And if we really raise the kids with values, and I'm talking here about positive change. It's not just change. We clearly need change. But when we have one part of the population that is overcoming over the other one in terms of giving opportunities to exploit new business ideas or scaling up, like I was mentioning, it has to do with values.
Right.
And if kids are well raised at home, I think that we should be able to minimize all the problems that we have nowadays. And to me, it's sad to see that, and you mentioned Cristina. I think that limiting the potential of women entrepreneurs is limiting the potential of growth and social progress. And if we are not able to solve this issue, we will continue like that. And our generation will not be able to solve these systemic barriers, structural biases. And if we are not able to do that, we are just procrastinating this to further generations. So if we do not take this seriously from home, education is good in the schools, and I totally agree that the presence of women should be larger in STEM industry sectors and all this, but we saw in the results that the more sustainable people in this planet in terms of entrepreneurship are women, in terms of thinking. And if we want to get to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, this is the wrong direction. Cesare mentioned this morning that we are far away. And we are running
in the opposite direction right now.
So this has to do with values.
Yes, it does. Yeah, indeed. Mahsa, if you had a magic wand in South Africa, knowing what you know and looking at our data, and with your experience so far, and also the other countries, I mean, if you had that magic wand, what would what would make the biggest difference in terms of a policy decision? And then let's see what Cristina thinks of the feasibility of that.
That's an interesting point, because I'm thinking that I am originally from Iran, in a society that's based on the tradition. And then reflecting to the point that Stephen mentioned about that we need to find a relationship between some indicators that we are working based on the data. So think about even reflecting to the point that another of our young entrepreneurs said about business angels. So I would like to mention about the reaction of the business angels for their actually behavior to invest to the business, because business angels usually think about who is leading the business, who is the owner. They are not overall thinking about the overall performance of the business and their outcomes. So back to the concept that I'm originally from, the tradition, which is particularized. So it means that the business owner usually would like to first think about the relatives and their tie with the family and the friends, and then go further for strangers, because the regulations, and then it's not really their comfort zone for them compared to for example, the Scandinavian countries, that trust is universal. So definitely women entrepreneurs will be affected based on their societies and the context where they're from. So when we are thinking about the relationship between the business angels and the reaction for the women entrepreneurs, we need to think about their society based on the tradition compared to the modern secular society that is completely different and will be affect on their behavior. So, and definitely will be related to South Africa and our countries from the MENA and even Middle East.
Right, thank you. I mean, Cristina, would you like to react to that? I know you've already talked a bit about, the difficulties in getting the cultures to change, and we talked about education, etc. But what about this area of investment and business angels? And is there anything a policymaker can actually do to move those goalposts? Or?
Well, again, and I come back to this thing about, everything has to start at home. Yes, at home, at the school, at the university, at the working place. So we have to try to make this level. But what we have also analyzed, and we have been working with companies, not business angels, but companies in general in our industrial sector. And it's a reality that, for example, in the selection process for hiring people, that could be not exactly the same, but a selection process for a business angels in where to invest, women have a different attitude than men. So, and this is something that should be taken into account. So we are working with companies that have realized that this is different, and they are practicing different approaches in hiring processes when addressing women and when addressing men. Right. So this is something that should maybe also could be translated to the case of how to make a selection for an investment. And it's a different way how women present themselves, present their project, present their potential of success is in a different way than men. And this should be taken into account.
Absolutely. Okay. I'm going to have a few questions now before we close at 6, and if we could have the lights down, because we absolutely can't see you at all. Is there someone out there?
Yes.
Yes. So I'm just wondering if there are any questions. Is there anyone there who would like to make a comment? No hands? Okay, 1, 2, 3. There's one? Up there at the back. Yes, thank you. If you could introduce yourself and your organization, please. Yes, could you maybe stand so that we can see you? Sorry, thank you very much.
Yes, so my name is Johanna Videgain. I'm actually based here, but I lived all my life abroad. So it's really interesting to have this international perspective. I'm a coach for entrepreneurs and executives. And my question is for you, Cristina. I got really intrigued by your 3 pillars. You mentioned the first one, about how to transform the culture. And I would love to hear for the 2 others.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to elaborate on our plan. So we define a framework where we have like this strategic imperative about the cultural change. And then the 3 building blocks are, one of them, the data and research. Second one is to make the industrial activity attractive for people in general, for women in special, but making the, making this attractive. And the third one, we started thinking about something that is quite common, that is the need of female role models. And that's true, it's very important, very relevant, but we now are not changing, but putting the effort in also working with the idea of companies' role models. So we are looking for companies that have understood the relevance of involving women in their activity, and we are working with them to highlight their strategies and their commitment towards gender equality and how this is impacting in positive in the competitiveness of the companies. So this is now our third building block, is two in principle, female role models, and company, equalitarian companies role models.
Okay. Do we have another question? Anyone who would like to? Okay. Oh, Thomas, yes.
I would like to ask if
I don't think he needs a mic. Thank you.
Actually, everyone on the panel, what has the crisis been doing to women? Because women have been catching up until the crisis came. I don't know what your sense is. Did the crisis hit the women especially much?
The COVID-19 crisis? Which crisis? We have so many crises.
We have a crisis over crisis.
The COVID-19.
Crisis upon crisis.
Yeah, exactly.
It all comes humbling upon us. But that makes the question important.
No, I mean, we're very clear on COVID-19. I think, Amanda, you can probably talk about this. Yeah.
Right, so typically, the smallest businesses are hit the hardest when we have market disruptions, and women are overrepresented among those businesses. Secondarily, during the pandemic, schools closed and institutional care for senior family members, and women tended to carry that burden, so we saw larger drops in startup rates for women. We saw larger closure rates for established businesses for women during COVID, and we're definitely seeing signs of recovery. But I think this was covered very well by the press, certainly in North America and many parts of Europe, hopefully in other parts of the world, where the pandemic really pushed women back into the home front because of the government response, right, was just to, and also the responses, for example, of many institutions, like rather than put families at risk by having kids in schools or daycare, you know, people worried about senior family members being trapped in elder care homes and the rapid spread of disease among immunocompromised patients. So, but then at the same time, you know, women also are overrepresented among many categories of essential workers. So I think we were worried during the pandemic, Thomas, that there would be a huge, we'd be setting back women's rights for a long time. I think we've seen a rebound, but anyone who studies, you know, entrepreneurship and small business, you know that small businesses often recover pretty quickly. We have less information on the financial devastation that hit a lot, because we know household income in the GEM data was hit pretty hard. Again, it's the poorest households, it's the smallest businesses that get hit, and women tend to be overrepresented in both of those categories.
Yeah, you know, the year before last, I was asked to speak over Zoom to a gathering of Ukrainian women entrepreneurs. Most of their husbands were at war. And I was so impressed by the resilience and determination of these women. And I think that in crises, you know, the world wars that we've had in the past, women have kind of taken almost, if there is an opportunity in a war, women have grasped the opportunity to move their status, you know. They move the goalposts because, well, necessity makes it. So, in fact, in the World War II, women moved into sectors of society that they weren't in before. The same for World War I, you know. And so in this situation in Ukraine, many of these women were now the bread earners in their family, and were making, you know, huge strides with their businesses in spite of a very difficult situation. Yeah, I just think that's interesting.
Actually, historically, in terms of crises, whether we're looking at plagues or war, where the men kind of disappear and the women have to go in and take over guilds and companies and livelihoods for families, they actually gain a lot of status. And then when the men come back in, whether that's coming back from war or whether that's the next generation of men grow up, that status can last for a short time or last 20 years before the next generation comes up. And then the leaders tend to make rules that privilege the men, and women are sent back into the household. This is well documented in gender history. It's happened over and over and over again over the ages. And of course, you know, that's a big concern when we have policymakers who are making policies that make it difficult for women to participate in the workplace. I will also add that in a lot of research around business and entrepreneurship, we have a tendency to really focus on the public sphere, like the marketplace, and we tend to ignore the home. So I'm sort of thinking of Cristina's comments here. It has to start at the home. The interesting thing is we tend not to measure family variables. We don't do that in GEM, in fact. And the funny thing about it is when we do measure those family variables in business research and entrepreneurship research, it turns out these factors matter a lot for men, too. So the private sphere has a big impact on what we're able to do in the public sphere. So for women, it's both related, but the home gets categorized as a woman's issue rather than the whole society, right? And what's good for social progress, and then what's good for social progress is having, you know, a balance. And whether that's a division of labor or a balance of men and women's activities in the home and men and women's activities in the marketplace, I think is something that plays out in different ways in different societies, and that ends up being the cultural change, you know, that we've touched on here.
Thank you for wrapping it all up, because I'm going to finish with that. We have the gala dinner later on this evening. I think those that are going to the gala dinner, don't forget, you know, we always have a saying in Switzerland, it's the timeliness of the Swiss watch. So if you want to take part in the guided tour of the museum, turn up at 8 o'clock, otherwise you will not be able to participate, okay? Just saying that. So that's only for the GEM Consortium members and invited guests that are going to the gala dinner. For everyone else, good night, good evening, and see you later at the gala dinner. And thank you so much to our panel. Thank you.